And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science.
I am very grateful that God was with me throughout all the years I was doing my best to act like He didn't exist. I can now see the proof of how He was with me, and I'd like to give 2 examples of that. The first is, during those years, I kept feeling the need to learn certain things, usually technical skills, and now these skills are being put to use in this church. At the time, I felt a little foolish about all the effort I put into learning, yet it never occurred to me to stop. Most of these skills I didn't have any need for at all before coming here. It is obvious there was a plan behind all of it, and equally obvious I had no idea what that plan was until I came to Plainfield. The second example is that I could see so clearly hundreds of times He protected me and my children. Once the brakes in my Blazer gave out going down a hill, with my daughter, son, and their mother with me. We ended up driving off a cliff, dropping 25 or 30 feet, and getting wedged between the rocks and a house. I had an open bag of tools that fell down through the vehicle, yet missed all of us. None of us were hurt, and the first man to the scene looked just like pretty much any picture of Jesus you've ever seen. Foolishly, I still needed 11 more years to stop feeling like a victim and finally start praying again. Coming here to Plainfield and learning about Christian Science is helping me to see and understand all of that. It's helping me to be more active in listening to and obeying God. And of course, it's helping me to learn my lessons and see every blessing. I'm so grateful that God never gave up on me, and gratefully found a use for me here. And I'm grateful to Plainfield for all the wonderful resources available, and to my practitioner for daily support. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. What a beautiful lesson this evening. Thank you so much. It reminded me of an experience that I had many years ago caring for some good friend's son. He was 4 years old. They were about to have their second child, and they called me on a Saturday evening saying it was time, would I please come and take care of Eric while they went to the hospital. I did mention to them that the next day I had church and needed to be there. Would it be okay if I took little Eric to Sunday school? And of course, they said that was not a problem. I don't believe Eric had ever been to a Sunday school before, so this was his first experience. I took him, he went to his class, and afterwards he told me how much he enjoyed it. We went home, and that evening I got him ready for bed, tucked him in after he said his prayers, and I said goodnight to him. Well, he called me about 3 or 4 times to his room. He was having a struggle. He couldn't sleep. And so I finally said to him, what did you learn about God today in Sunday school? And he told me that God was always there and God could always help. So I said to him, maybe you should ask him right now what you can do about this sleep problem you're having. And he said, okay, he would do it. So I left the room, and a few moments later, he excitedly called me back to his room, and he said, I asked God what I should do. I said, God, I can't sleep. What can I do? And he said to me, I heard God say, close your eyes and you will sleep. He was so excited about this, he just couldn't get over it. And he looked at me and he said, you know, me thinking was God talking. And it just blew me away. It was the first time, as I said, that I believe he had ever been to a Sunday school. I was so grateful for this experience. This little child turned wholeheartedly to God. He listened, and he had a revelation. Me thinking is God talking. It's no wonder Mrs. Eddy and Jesus just wanted all the little children to come to them, and Mrs. Eddy loved children, so I was so grateful for this experience. It was really an enlightenment for me also. I had to share that tonight, and I thank you so much for Plainfield, for all of your activities, for your loving, dedicated practitioners, for every one of you that works so hard to make this church so wonderful. Thank you.
And thank you.
One day last week, we went on a family day trip. While I was praying in the morning for the trip, the thought came to establish the atmosphere for the day and take your atmosphere with you. Well, since God is everywhere and is only good, that atmosphere is everywhere, but unless we recognize it and acknowledge it, sometimes we can miss it. So I did. I knew that we were in the atmosphere of God's love and could never get out of it. And the trip was wonderful. It was done to bless someone, and it was a wonderful trip. And then on the way home, there were storm clouds ahead of us. And every town we got to, the roads were full of puddles, but no rain. The rain had passed. Every town we went to, that happened. So we never got rained on. And I just was so grateful because that was the evidence of the atmosphere of pure love. We were wonderfully comfortable. The temperature lowered. It was just a wonderful day. It was a blessing for all of us. And I am just so grateful to God that He does care for us wherever we are, and that we acknowledge that and we're grateful for it. And I've learned all that here in this church. I never knew God much before, and to learn how close He is, and to learn that we can turn to Him at any moment and get an answer, like the little boy did. I am just so very grateful for this church and grateful for the readings tonight. They were very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
For the past few months, I've been constructing a building for a ceramics business. I'm doing the work alone and had in mind when I thought the work should be finished. I had it all planned out and pushed myself every day. The work was going along, but not as well as I planned. I started getting run down and making too many mistakes. I became frustrated with my family because they were constantly asking me to stop what I was doing and attend to their needs, along with maintaining all the requirements of owning a home. I had completely lost sight of God in it all. I refused to listen to the warning signs, the agitations, and the tiredness due to worry and lack of sleep. Instead of stopping to handle the negativity in my thoughts and reconnecting with God, I kept pushing myself to do more. I had stopped listening to God and had put out of thought what I had been learning through Christian Science. Then one morning I woke up unable to move, in severe pain. Now I was ready to listen. I received a very loud and clear message. This is not God's governing of events. This is me pushing myself, full of self-will, setting schedules, being frustrated with my family when all they were asking me to do was to rest. I recall a discussion we had during one of our roundtables about our work for God. It was said that this work should be peaceful and harmonious. It should bring joy to our hearts and bless others. I contacted my practitioner and told her what was happening. She gave me passages from Miscellany and Science and Health to read. I took a few days off from building and rested with the work that God had given me to do. I put more effort into renewing my faith in God, strengthening my understanding, and most of all, giving praise to God for all the blessings I had already received by His loving grace and mercy. I spent some time with my family and worked on things that would bring joy to others. As my practitioner worked on my problem, I was able to sleep better and recovered my energy, guiding me back to putting God first. When I went back to work on the building, I was able to be more productive in one day than I had been in a full week of work. There was no frustration, no worry about the timeline, and no pain. Just peaceful, harmonious productivity. The next day, however, when I went back out to work, doubt and fear came creeping in. I started thinking about all the work I had left to do. I became violently ill. I wrote to my practitioner about it, and in minutes the whole ordeal had disappeared. He knew that reversal is not possible, and immediately the truth appeared. I'm so grateful for the strong work that she did. I went back to work completely restored. I'm so grateful to God for all I've been given. Christian Science has changed my life in so many ways. It has taught me to turn to God for everything I need, to keep Him in the forefront of my thought every second of every day. Most importantly, that I can do nothing without Him. I'm continually learning these lessons, and I praise God for them. I'm grateful to my practitioner for her continual work, guiding me out of the dream of mortality and keeping me focused on the truth. And to Mrs. Eddy for giving us Christian Science. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
Thanks. This weekend I got the July issue of Love is the Liberator. And after reading it, I was just so filled with awe. I don't know how else to explain this, but I was just overwhelmed with the purity of it. It just moved me so much. And tonight, before the service, I was looking through it again, and I was struck by a quotation from Mrs. Eddy from Science and Health, where it said, "A louder song, sweeter than has ever before reached high heaven, now rises clearer and nearer to the great heart of Christ. For the accuser is not there, and love sends forth her primal and everlasting strain." Well, this made me think of the sweet message of healing love that this church is sending forth, Mrs. Eddy's Pure Christian Science. I am so grateful to God for leading me back to this church. I'm grateful for Mrs. Eddy's Christian Science. It is really the pearl of great price. And I am so grateful for this church and the practitioners and all the members who are doing so much wonderful work there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tom from Iowa, go ahead.
Thank you. Last Saturday night, I was suffering from a terrible sense of oppression and chest pains. I kept praying and affirming the truth from the lesson, and in just a moment, it all broke and vanished into its native nothingness, and I was freed. I thank God for this healing, and I give thanks also for practitioner support and to the Plainfield Church for imparting pure and genuine Christian Science. And I also think the website is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
Occasionally I wake up in the night and I can't fall back to sleep very easily. Sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 hours to fall back to sleep. This has gone on for several years, and while it's not an every night occurrence, it's annoying when it happens. I used to mull over my problems and rehearse error until I got awfully worked up, and it was definitely wide awake at that point. But over the past year, I've become more alert to these moments, and now use them to pray, not just for myself, but also for my family and country and world. It's not always easy to keep my thought consistently on God, because mortal mind wants nothing more than for me to wallow in it. It does take practice. But through the understanding I've gleaned through the lessons, roundtables, and Bible studies at Plainfield, it has gotten easier for me to stick to the truth that God's mind is my mind, His consciousness is my consciousness, and therefore I have the ability and the authority to dismiss any unproductive thoughts that are trying to masquerade as my thoughts. They just can't mesmerize me. One thing I realized recently is that part of the reason I used to dread being awake during the night is that the next morning I would be groggy and tired. But now I know that if I wake during the night, I better listen to what's waking me and get busy praying. A statement from Science and Health that was in the lesson a couple weeks ago really resonated with me, and it's this statement: the consciousness of truth rests us more than hours of repose and unconsciousness. So if I'm abiding in the consciousness of truth, then I don't have to be concerned that I'll wake up tired in the morning. And that's freed me from being worried at all about this. And also today I was led to this citation, also from Science and Health. God rests in action. Imparting has not impoverished, can never impoverish the divine mind. No exhaustion follows the action of this mind, according to the apprehension of divine science. The highest and sweetest rest, even from a human standpoint, is in holy work. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Thank you. I am most grateful for Christian Science, and I'm grateful for the progress that I have been making. And I think the turning point was when I decided wholeheartedly to tithe to the church. I made a program so that I can keep track of it on a computer, and it automatically deducts a tithe for every income bit I get. Progress has been some severe, for I not only have my own home, but I have several other homes I've been able to purchase because of this. And each time I do, the tithing is added to for the church. I am most grateful. Thank you.
And thank you too, Jim.
330941.
Okay, someone's called in from area code 330941. Can you please announce yourself and then go ahead with your testimony?
Yes, I'm so grateful for the peace of mind I have gained since becoming a part of Plainfield. I'm grateful for my practitioner and for Christian Science for the tremendous change this has brought about in my life. And I'm so grateful for tonight's program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Day.
Day from Maryland, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for what I'm learning about the importance of patience and the message from this week's lesson that reminds me that true patience has no limit. Now when I find myself becoming frustrated, annoyed, or angry, or when I'm trying to get something done that seems to be the right idea but doesn't seem to be progressing or working out right, it's always clear to me that I need to be more patient. And when I feel like I'm running out of patience, I need to go to the source and ask God for more. When I persist in asking for as long as I possibly can, He always gives me what I need. The 1828 dictionary defines patience as the act or quality of waiting long for justice or expected good without discontent. I've learned through Christian Science that it's necessary that I maintain my joy no matter what. I often fight for my joy while awaiting certain outcomes. And when I'm able to remain joyful and most importantly loving towards others, I'm able to hear what God is telling me and to see what He's showing me. The result is always very good, and it does bless in a big way. I'm so thankful for learning the power of God's timing for all things and for His guidance in all that I do. Thank you so much for tonight's meeting and for the wonderful message in tonight's reading.
Thank you.
When I was a freshman in high school, I broke my wrist. I knew nothing of Christian Science, and my parents took me to a doctor, and I had my wrist set. And after it supposedly healed, I had pain and it was weak. When it was mentioned to the doctor, he said I would have to live with that for the rest of my life. And I did for many years. And then I found this church. And one day, the weather had changed and my wrist was bothering me. And I asked the practitioner, can God heal this? And I was assured that God could, that God can heal everything. And that was just a medical belief that was laid on me. And God did not know it, and I didn't have to have it, and no one else did either. Well, that was the end of my wrist ever bothering me. I never had to wear a wrist brace again. I had no problems at all. And it's been many years, and I am just so grateful. It is perfect. I'm so grateful for Christian Science, for Mrs. Eddy, and for practitioner help, and for all this, the books and pamphlets and everything we have, the teaching, the Bible study, everything we have in this church, I cannot be grateful enough for. And thank you for the readings.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that every week on our website we post a selection from the book 500 Watching Points by Gilbert Carpenter. And the one that's on our website now for this week really touched my heart. I'm so grateful that it's there. And it talked about how important it is to take time, I'm just reading one of the sentences here, to soar mentally into the realm of spiritual uplift in order to contemplate heaven, peopled with spiritual beings, governed in perfect harmony, and that we need to refresh our hearts and souls with this vision at frequent intervals. It brought to mind an experience that I had a little while ago where I was working on a project and it seemed like things were going well for a while, but then things bogged down and I kept working harder and harder to solve the project and bring it to a conclusion, and it just was getting to be more and more willful pushing and not progress. So I had a chance to just sit quietly for a while and ask God what I needed, and the message that came back was, well, are you praying to me to solve this problem for you, or are you praying to me so that you can feel my presence and power? And I could see that I was just so intent on finishing this project, but I was not intent at all at feeling God's presence and power. So I took more time, put that project aside, out of my mind, out of sight, wasn't even looking at it, and just thought about God, how close He is to each and every one of us, and started thanking Him for that He was always here, always present. He knows everything, and that He's so mighty. He's the only power there is. And I just rested in that. Well, the next morning I got up, and without even thinking of this other project, the idea came what I needed to do, and it was quickly completed without willfully pushing. So I'm thankful for God that He showed me the way, that I was corrected on this project issue, and this wonderful watching point that's on our website right now. If I had to give it a name, I would call it Inspiration versus Willfully Driving Things. That's my own name for it. Obviously, inspiration wins out. And the lesson that it drives, that we need to take time to refresh our views of God, which are all good. And what a powerful thing that is. So I'm very thankful for that. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Tonight I am very grateful for our Plainfield Church and what I am learning about God and Christian Science. Last week, our printer would not work. We tinkered with it for some time before leaving it alone. The next morning, as I was reading the weekly lesson sermon on truth, another name for God, it came to me that demonstrating was what Christ had taught us is not about fixing people or things, but rather knowing and trusting God. All the while, a lawnmower nearby stopped running, and then a grinding noise persisted. I thought then that there was no reason for the mower to break down. The men were working diligently. I prayed to know God, like the little mustard seed. Soon the mower started up. It was then that I thought about the printer. I had been ready to call for help, but instead went back to the printer, and it started right up and printed True Rest by Peter V. Ross. That was over a week ago, and the printer has been working, of course. Knowing God and loving God, who is all, is the answer to everything. And I am learning this right here at Plainfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary or Gary, go ahead.
I'll read a few statements tonight from our website church bulletin board. The first from Florida. Today's roundtable session was wonderful. I was especially touched by Benjamin saying that we need to be passionate about our love for God. I could feel the fervor in his heart for God. Thank you, dear friends, for opening your hearts here. It is so helpful and inspiring to me. And then Georgia. So grateful for the interview Joseph conducted with his friend from Pakistan at the Wednesday meeting. Much love to his friend and family, and gratitude for translating Plainfield's weekly lesson sermon into Urdu. Thank you. And then also from Georgia, I'm so grateful for the love, support, and dedication of all the workers in Plainfield, New Jersey. Without you, Mrs. Eddy's Pure Christian Science would not have reached me or the world. Thank you so very much. And then Pennsylvania. Thank you for the beautiful solo duo today. It touched my heart with a needed message. Its encouraging, tender message was sweetly and gently sung. I'm very grateful for those beautiful readings tonight, and also the testimonies. Our God is real. I used to have a very vague sense of God, something I hope exists, but I wasn't really sure. And one wonderful thing about Christian Science is it doesn't have you accept anything that you can't prove for yourself. And if you have faith, even as small as a grain of mustard seed, and you start out just with that little bit of faith, that little bit of trust, taking those first steps, you can find that God is real and that he is a very present and ever help. Every moment of every day, he's with you, and you only have to turn to him to find him. The readings tonight, the beautiful readings tonight about listening to God's voice, reminded me of a YouTube that was recently sent to me. It was about a Norwegian farmer who had a sheep farm, and it showed, I guess, some of his friends were calling the sheep. The sheep weren't that far away. They were beyond the fence, and the various friends would go up to the fence and call the sheep, and the sheep would definitely ignore them. But when the farmer went to the fence and called them, right away their heads went up, they looked, and they came. And so it is with us. As we hear God's voice, it's something cultivated, as Janet beautifully mentioned with that little boy. A little child can learn to hear God's voice, but sometimes through the false education and the harsh noises of the day, we might seem to think we've lost that ability, but it is there, and you can revive it and cherish it and cultivate it. And I'll often get the question, well, how do you know? Is it God's voice or is it something else? And the answer to that is to first to know and to declare that you can hear God's voice. He is speaking to you. And then you go forward from there. And perhaps sometimes you might make a mistake. Maybe you do something and turns out it wasn't God's voice. So you can learn from it and continue to grow. But keep listening, keep asking, and you will find that you hear him. Sometimes it just comes as a intuition or a gentle nudge. All of these things are ways in which God speaks to you so that you can hear his voice. I'm so grateful to be learning this in this church. Grateful for all the wonderful members, everyone throughout the world. So grateful for our service tonight.
Thank you.